The pale Georgia sunlight slipped through the courthouse windows like thin blades of gold as Maya Sullivan tightened her trembling fingers around the auction paddle. Sweat gathered along her spine despite the cool air of the room, and her heart beat so violently she felt certain the people beside her could hear it. 34 years old, 2 children, $12,000 left to her name. That number echoed inside her skull like a countdown. Emma sat beside her, small hands folded in her lap, swinging her legs nervously as if she could somehow kick away the fear growing in her mother's chest. Lucas scribbled on the back of an auction pamphlet with a broken pencil, blissfully unaware that his entire future balanced on this single, fragile moment. 3 years earlier, Maya had lived a different life. She wore pressed blouses, carried spreadsheets instead of worry, and woke each morning knowing exactly where her next paycheck was coming from. She had savings, health insurance, and weekend plans that didn't include rationing groceries. Then the company downsized. Her husband disappeared into another woman's life. The safety net beneath her gave way piece by piece. One job became two, two became three, sleep vanished, hope thinned. Until one night, exhausted and searching for meaning through the glow of her phone, she found the listing, an abandoned estate hidden in the Georgia backwoods, wrapped in rumor and rot. Everyone said it was cursed. Everyone said it was worthless. Maya saw possibility where others saw ruin. When the auctioneer's voice echoed through the room asking for the first bid, silence spread thick as dust. And when hesitation ruled every other heart, Maya lifted her paddle and chose to gamble on survival. $6,000 hung in the air like a bad joke. Nobody moved. A few men in work boots chuckled, shaking their heads, already picturing the inevitable collapse of whoever was foolish enough to take this burden. Maya's chest tightened as if invisible hands were squeezing the breath from her lungs. If she waited, someone smarter might swoop in later. If she moved now, she would risk everything she had left. Her arms felt heavy, but her paddle rose before fear could anchor it. The auctioneer's voice snapped through the room like a gavel of fate. Sold. Then came the words that nearly buckled her knees, the taxes. $12,200 due in total. Every dollar she owned vanished in a single sentence. Emma tugged her sleeve softly. "Mama, did we win something?" Maya looked down into her daughter's hopeful eyes and forced a smile that felt like it might break her face. "Yes, baby, we won a house." 3 days later, the rusted iron gate of the estate groaned open as if the land itself resisted being claimed again. The mansion loomed ahead like a sleeping beast, columns cracked, windows shattered, ivy strangling the walls in silent conquest. The air smelled of mildew, rain-soaked wood, and something ancient. Their first night was spent on an air mattress beneath a ceiling that whispered with every shift of wind. Maya did not sleep. Footsteps echoed where no one walked. Scratches whispered inside the walls. And somewhere deep in the dark, faint, distant music drifted through the silence for only a few seconds before vanishing. Fear moved into the house before comfort ever could. But Maya stayed awake, guarding her children against everything she could not yet see. Daylight stripped away some of the terror and revealed the mansion's forgotten elegance beneath decades of neglect. Gilded frames dulled by dust still clung to walls that once hosted laughter. Hardwood floors bore scars but remained sturdy. Massive rooms stretched wide with echoes of a life once lived in abundance. At the far end of the hallway, Maya noticed a door unlike the others. Darker, thicker, carved with strange patterns that made her uneasy without reason. It resisted every tug until stubborn metal finally surrendered after hours of effort. The library opened like a sealed vault of history. Floor-to-ceiling shelves overflowed with books. Gold records shimmered faintly beneath layers of dust, catching light like trapped stars. A massive wooden desk sat beneath the quiet weight of forgotten secrets. And hidden behind a bookshelf moved by an almost invisible mechanism, she found the safe. Bolted into stone, cold, heavy, silent, waiting. That night Maya lay awake, listening to the house breathe and thinking only of that silent iron heart hidden behind wood and dust. The deputy's warnings echoed in her thoughts, rumors of lights, of sounds, of things that never quite left old places alone. The past did not usually lock itself away without reason, yet she felt drawn to that safe with a pull deeper than curiosity. It wasn't greed. It wasn't even hope. It was a certainty she could not name, as if every loss she had endured had been quietly guiding her toward this one sealed door. The journal appeared like a buried confession that could no longer bear its own silence. Tucked behind forgotten bindings, its leather edges worn smooth by time and memory, It spoke in broken lines of music, fear, and desperate calculation. One sentence froze Maya's blood. The bonds were hidden, the combination built from music and birth. Hours later, trembling fingers turned the dial using numbers pulled from years of history. The click came soft and final, like the last breath of something long waiting. The safe door opened, and reality tilted sideways. Stacks of paper filled the interior from top to bottom, bearer bonds in denominations her mind could barely process. 50,000, 100,000, 500,000, 1 million. Maya slid down to the cold floor as the weight of it crashed over her. When her counting finally stopped, the total shattered every boundary she had ever known, $240 million. It should have felt like rescue. It didn't. It felt like danger waking from a long sleep. Wealth hidden like this carried shadows. Questions. Owners who might never have stopped searching. As dawn crept through the curtains of the library windows, Maya closed the iron door and hid the truth behind the moving bookshelf once more. Minutes later, Emma and Lucas ran down asking for breakfast. With hands still trembling from the impossible fortune now buried in her walls, Maya poured milk and cereal as if nothing had changed, even though everything already had. Silence lasted 3 days before the storm arrived. Investigators came first, measured voices, sterile questions, eyes trained to doubt everything. Then lawyers followed. Then the world itself found her. News vans lined the long dirt road. Helicopters circled above the treetops. The abandoned mansion was abandoned no longer. It became a spectacle. Some neighbors brought food and whispered fragile kindness. Others delivered cruelty through unsigned envelopes. Thief, liar, fraud. Words sharp enough to slice deeper than hunger ever had. Then the phone calls began. One man spoke calmly of consequences. Another warned her to return what belonged to others. Fear moved into the house beside her children. It stood outside windows at night. It waited in the hallways where echoes once lived alone. Still, Maya chose the hardest road, the road of truth. Her attorney laid out years of legal war ahead. The estate would challenge her claim. The government would demand its share. The public would dismantle her private life piece by piece. "Are you ready for that?" the lawyer asked quietly. Maya thought of crying in empty parking lots after lost jobs, of selling her wedding ring for grocery money, of 2 children who believed she could move mountains simply because she was their mother. She lifted her chin. "I don't need to be ready," she said. "I just need to be honest." The letter hidden in the basement finally broke the last chain of doubt. It explained the panic, explained the disappearance, explained why the mansion had been abandoned while the fortune remained behind like a skeleton key to the past. The wealth had never been stolen. It had been hidden in fear and forgotten in survival. And in the final line, written in steady ink, the truth struck Maya's soul, waiting for someone who needs it more. Authentication would take months. Courtrooms would demand years. Powerful enemies would rise. But for the first time in nearly a decade, Maya was no longer guessing at tomorrow. She was finally fighting for it with clarity instead of desperation. Slowly, the house began to wake. The well ran clean. The lights stayed on. The leaks stopped. Emma planted flowers where broken boards once sagged. Lucas played music from dusty recordings deep inside the house, filling hollow spaces with life again. Nothing transformed overnight, but progress replaced paralysis. And even with unimaginable wealth now within reach, Maya worked harder than she ever had. She showed up to hearings, signed every sworn statement, told the truth even when lies would have brought faster comfort. Because money could rebuild a structure. Only character could rebuild a life. Years later, the mansion stood reborn beneath wide Georgia skies. White columns gleamed again in the sun. Laughter filled rooms once haunted by silence. The legal storms slowly passed. The bonds were validated. The world moved on to newer miracles. But what remained inside that family was deeper than anything the headlines could ever carry. Emma grew into a woman who believed in second chances without forgetting the cost of survival. Lucas learned that legends may whisper through walls, but courage lives in daily decisions. Maya never became reckless with wealth. She rebuilt shelters, restored forgotten homes, funded schools where dignity had once been stripped away. And on quiet nights, when the house slept peacefully for the first time in decades, she would stand alone in the library and glance toward the space where the bookshelf once shifted open. The safe was long gone. The lesson it carried never left. She had chosen truth when no one was watching, and every blessing that followed had been shaped by that single decision. Maya learned that night in the hidden safe that money never arrives as rescue. It arrives as responsibility. It does not erase fear, it magnifies